Hello, and welcome to Truck Talk. Now, before I even get started here, I'll remind you that at the bottom of the video player or down in the description below, you can find chapter links. So if you get tired of listening to me talk about something, you can skip forward to the next section really easily. Now, let me just explain what I'm doing here. This is going to be an experimental sort of new midweek series of videos where I don't talk about trucks. It's not Truck Talk where I talk about trucks. It is Truck Talk where I am talking in my truck. Now, I have accumulated a fairly hefty list of topics that come up that I feel like I would like to talk about. A lot of times they are prompted by comments that I receive on my videos, interesting questions or observations that I think seem worth discussing further. So I'd like to try addressing some of the comments that I receive in this new series. Now, sort of experimental first Truck Talk was when I addressed the question of why do I not share location specifics in my video? So we're going to call this Truck Talk number 2. Now, like you, I watch a lot of YouTube, although I don't generally watch people go out exploring and camping. I usually watch other types of content on YouTube, and a lot of what I watch is various people who I find interesting or insightful in some way talking about various subjects. And a lot of time, they are just sitting at a desk talking to the camera. And you know what? It doesn't bother me at all to watch that. I don't need to see them out doing something. If they're just talking about a topic I want to hear them talk about. But I am not really comfortable standing in front of the camera or sitting at my desk in front of the camera and talking. It doesn't feel natural to me. I even experimented with this on a Patreon exclusive video, sat at my desk, set up the camera, talked about my topic. It just, to me, felt awkward. I didn't like the way it turned out. When I'm driving down the road, talking to you like this, it feels very natural to me. It's almost like you're my passenger. So we're going to see how this goes. I don't think we'll necessarily get one of these every single week, but just as I have opportunity and time to put these together, I will. And I'm going to try and drop them as extra midweek content. So if you aren't interested in listening to me drive down the road talking about some various topics that come up in the comments, then you can just skip the midweek videos. You'll also be able to tell from this different thumbnail style, like this. So if this series doesn't interest you, you can stick to the Saturday drops. Those will continue to be adventures or DIY stuff, working on the truck or the camper, or the occasional review of products that I think may be interesting and relevant to you, my viewers. Some of the Truck Talk episodes will be about a single topic, depending on how much I have to say about it. Some will try to answer numerous viewer questions or comments. Now, the first topic I want to talk about in this episode is the question that I brought up in my recent video about putting the carpet on the roof of the camper. Now, there are those metal support strips that run across the camper that I did not carpet, and I was trying to figure out a way to insulate those. And I sort of posed the question to you, my viewers. So sort of a long story. I have read through all of the comments you have all made on that video. I have not replied to any of them. I ended up with a family emergency shortly after that video dropped. I had to leave town and be out of town for several days. It was a pretty big disruption in my schedule, and I had to just let go of trying to reply to the many helpful comments I received. So a number of you had various suggestions for how to cover those metal strips. Now, a number of you talked about just inserting something and letting it sort of cove over those bolts. I feel like if I want to eliminate condensation on that metal, I can't have any air gaps. I feel like the moist air from inside the camper would get behind something that wasn't perfectly adhered to that metal. Condensation would accumulate, and that actually would be even more difficult for it to dry off and possibly get moldy back there. I don't know. So I don't want to just like superficially cover it up. A number of you talked about removing those metal strips and carpeting underneath them or putting something underneath them to sort of block the thermal bridging that's occurring there. And that probably would be effective. Those bolts go right through the ceiling, through the roof of the camper to the outside. And I don't want to unseal them. I don't want to take them all apart and worry about getting them perfectly sealed back up again when I rebolt those up. So I've sort of ruled out that approach as well. As it turns out, I may have stumbled across a solution that I wasn't quite expecting. I'm going to experiment with that a little bit, and I will be talking about that further in an upcoming video. So I wanted to say thank you to all of you who watched that video and had suggestions for me to address those metal crossbeams. Thank you. So completely unrelated, next topic today is my little device right here. I get a lot of questions about this, and I've never made a video about it. This is the ScanGauge III. It connects to the OBD2 port of the vehicle, and it provides an array of gauges that you can choose from to monitor various vehicle systems. For example, I have mine set up to show battery voltage. I can see my transmission temperature. So when I'm, climbing hills, I can keep an eye on whether or not my transmission is overheating. I've also got the coolant temperature, so I could just see how the radiator is doing. I've got it set up to show my current speed. And what's interesting about that is that you're able to dial in a compensation if you're running a different size tire from stock. Because I'm running oversized tires, my speedometer does not read 100% accurately. It's pretty close, but it's not quite accurate. And also the MPG calculation of the truck itself is also therefore off. So I have my ScanGauge set up to show a more accurate speed reading, to show what they call instant MPG. So it's the exact miles per gallon I'm getting at any given instant. So I can see, when I'm coasting downhill, that number goes way up. When I'm pressing on the gas or hitting some sort of incline, that number goes down. And then I've got trip MPG, which shows the average for the current time the truck is running. And I found those really useful, not only just to keep track of the kind of mileage I'm getting on different kinds of driving, but also the instant MPG readout has actually impacted the way that I drive. So this has been really nice to have. And unlike the earlier ScanGauge II, which is a very similar device, this has a really easy to read touchscreen readout. It works great. You can completely configure the gauges any way that you want. You could have 3 different screens of gauges. So you could have these different sets or different combinations depending on how you want to use them. And the other nice thing about it is that it will also scan check engine light codes. So if I've got a check engine light code that comes on, I can flip over to the scan mode and it will read the code, tell me what the code is, and I can figure out what I need to address. I haven't really felt compelled to make a video about that because there are videos out there about it, and ultimately, it just does what it's supposed to do. It works great. I've been really happy with it. It was a purchase I made. It was not sponsored or sent to me in any way, shape, or form, and I am 100% happy with this purchase. Okay, pivoting again to another completely unrelated question that I get asked a lot. That is, where did I get that wool anorak that I wear? The hooded jacket with the laces here. It's one of my favorite pieces of outerwear. It is extremely warm, very comfortable, but it also breathes really nicely because it's made of wool. Now, this is not something you can buy. My buddy Scott actually made this. He made a number of them. This goes back a couple of years. It is modeled on Jason of Primal Outdoors. He's long wore a very similar sort of hooded wool jacket like that, and Jason made that himself, and it was kind of a one of a kind. So 1 year prior to Jason's Patreon meetup, Scott had the idea to make these for some of us who were going to be there, and we would all show up at Jason's Patreon event wearing these wool hooded jackets made out of wool blankets, just like Jason. So we each bought blankets, sent them to Scott, and he did all the sewing work on that, got it put together. Started as sort of a prank, albeit an expensive and time-consuming prank, but ultimately it has turned into one of my favorite jackets to wear. Unfortunately, I can't give you a link to where you can go and buy one, and for the number of hours that Scott put into making each of these, he is not interested in making them for anyone else. I mean, maybe he would, but you'd be looking at like $400 or $500 a pop, so probably not gonna happen. Okay, I think we'll call that good for this episode. Let me know how you feel about this format. Like I said, I have tons and tons of topics I would like to cover that just don't make sense as part of my adventure videos or part of my DIY videos, but I don't want to detract from that usual content that I post on the weekends, because I know not everyone wants to just hear me blather on about some topic or another. If you have any questions about what I just talked about now, post them in the comments below. Thank you for watching.